I'm Idiotech, and this is my review of Fallout 4 for PC. When I saw the 9s and 9.5s out of 10s across the board, I started to worry a little because journalists have a tendency to ignore problems and only report on the positives. And I was right in that assessment. Fallout 4 has a massive number of issues. Now, without going through every single one of them and listing them off point by point by point, I will try and cover some of the key ones here. The engine is old. It looks old. Everything it's capable of is kind of outdated at this point. It leads to an overall presentation problem, and it's not really okay when games like The Witcher 3 came out this year, which, quite frankly, is stunning visually compared to this game. There's no FOV slider for those who use PC. In a first-person game, this isn't cool. You need to edit a config file. There's mouse acceleration by default. You need to edit a config file. The PC UI is one of the worst PC UIs I have ever used. I can't stress this enough. It is fucking awful, and the design team behind it should be ashamed of themselves. I am still running into problems with this UI even 25 hours plus into this game, and that's just not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. UI is a fundamentally important element of a game's design, and they have absolutely failed in this regard. Now, there is an improved character system, but again, it's hampered by poor PC controls to the point where I gave up halfway through because I couldn't be bothered dealing with them. There is poor facial animations, poor lip sync technology. It looks atrocious. You may have even seen videos on YouTube of people making fun of this. The facial textures are also bad. The environmental texture detail is awful. I can't even read signs in the game. It's that low resolution. It looks like a game from the Xbox 360. The frame rate is tied to the simulation rate, which means if you try and run this game above 75 FPS, the physics will break. So if you run a high refresh rate monitor, you're shit out of luck because the game doesn't support them. The anti-aliasing options are weak. You have full screen anti-aliasing or TAA, which is Nvidia's solution, both of which look terrible. They are blurry, but without it, you have extreme jaggies. You can't override this with the control panel in any way, so you kind of just have to deal with it. There's rare crashing problems. I had it 3 times when loading new areas. The game just froze and crashed on me. The game stutters at times, even with a solid frame rate. This only seems to happen indoors, and it's very strange. I can't quite put my finger on why this would be happening. FPS in general is okay, but when you go into city areas, for example, the Boston Common region, you're going to experience frame drops. Now, I did look up on PC Master Race because a lot of people were having issues with this, and I found the solution is simply to lower your shadow distance to medium or low. This seems to entirely resolve the FPS issues and indicates to me that there are some severe optimization issues that need to be addressed. One thing I should mention is that God rays kill performance on some machines. The difference between ultra and low is visually almost non-existent, so if you are having frame rate issues, I thoroughly suggest you lower the game down to a lower setting. Several bugs in the game, and it's almost a running joke at this point because Bethesda continually release games packed full of bugs and everyone laughs at them. They make for funny YouTube montage videos, but at the end of the day, this is a product. I'm paying money for it and I expect it to work. Enemies rain from the sky, my hands and weapon disappear randomly, I have audio tracks looping endlessly, there is clipping issues, etc, etc, etc. You know what to expect at this point from a Bethesda game, and it is no different here. There are long loading times when fast traveling or entering and exiting buildings. If you have an SSD, I strongly recommend that you use it, otherwise you're going to be sitting there for 30 seconds to a minute to enter and exit buildings. Companions, while great, often get stuck in walls or prevent the player from moving entirely. The player character is voice acted and uses a conversation similar to Mass Effect. Unfortunately, it isn't very easy to understand. I'll often tell my character to do something in conversation, and he'll say something completely different to what I expected or in a completely different tone, causing a conflict where I didn't intend one. It's not great, and it does take away from the sense of roleplay that you had in previous games. The hacking system in the game is pretty fucking awful. It's boring and uninspired. When compared to games like Deus Ex Human Revolution that created quite a compelling minigame out of their hacking system, this is simply a guess the password, and if you fail, get locked out of the terminal for fucking 10 seconds. The AI, enemy AI that is dumb as shit. They get stuck in walls, they don't shoot at the player when they have line of sight, they don't respond to people being killed in front of them. I will literally blow a man's head off 5 feet away from another guy and he will say, huh? What was that noise? The story pacing feels rushed. I won't spoil anything here, but you leave your vault, experience your first rad roach, go, oh wow, what is this? This is weird. And within an hour of that, you're the leader of a faction. It feels weird, the pacing is off. Within another 2 hours of that, you'll become a high-level member of another faction. They seem to just rush through the story very quickly here, and the pacing seems off. Quests tend to be quite simple in terms of their objectives. Most of the time it results in you just killing all the things, and I feel that's a little bit too much sometimes when you consider this as an RPG. There are moral choices, you can choose to approach things in different ways occasionally, but they seem to have moved away from that a lot more in this version of the game. The final major issue with this game in terms of the negatives is that key features are never tutorialized. For example, VATS, a fundamental component of the combat system, is never explained. Building mechanics are not explained. Trading between settlements is never explained. How you scroll down the perk tree is never explained. New players are going to struggle. If you've never played a Fallout game before, you're going to have a hard time. And those people on YouTube who make video guides are going to make a lot of money over the next couple of months because this game's tutorials are frankly abysmal. Now, with all of that said, let's get on to the positives. The art style has a more cartoonish and vibrant look this time around, and it fits the universe incredibly well. I appreciate the fact that I no longer have to walk through a brown wasteland and that there is in fact color and nice things to look at, because human beings are resourceful creatures and they will find things to decorate their environment with. I really appreciate that change in direction. It makes the world much nicer to explore. I can't commend them enough there. The non-VATS gunplay is vastly improved and feels much more like a modern FPS. It makes shooting overall feel very satisfying, each weapon handles differently, and they feel very impactful. I thoroughly enjoy the moment-to-moment gunplay in this game, and I can't commend them enough for trying to improve that system when compared to their previous games. Voice acting is also improved, with key characters in the story being very compelling and very relatable, and you empathize with them, and I really appreciate that because Bethesda storytelling hasn't always been its strong point. There are still some characters that feel lifeless in their delivery, but it's much better than the previous games. The weapon and crafting system in this game is fucking fantastic. I've spent way too much time finding items in the game to break down, to make weapons out of, and I absolutely love that system. It's really the only way to get more power, and I love the fact that they put a major emphasis on weapon crafting and armor crafting in this game. Base building is also enjoyable, but it doesn't seem to have that many benefits. You can attract traders, you can build certain items that help you to produce more goods, you can grow food, and these are somewhat useful to you, but overall it feels a little bit like feature creep. It's nice, and it's good for people who like that Minecrafty creative stuff. You can probably do some pretty interesting stuff with the electronics in this game, but I don't find it particularly compelling personally. Exploration, on the other hand, is extremely engaging and rewarding. They seem to have compacted the world now. Every hill you walk over, there is something new to find. Everywhere you look, there is something you can go and explore, and I thoroughly appreciate that. Exploration in this game is by far the most compelling thing to do, and it's rewarded continuously, whether it be through new loot and items, whether it be through finding ammo, which is desperately scarce in this world, or whether it be that you find materials for crafting, or meet new characters, or stumble upon a story. I love the exploration in this game. It is the reason to pick up this game. Scavenging is essential. They made it core to the game. You need it to progress crafting, and you need it to find ammo. So I love that too. The game nails its intended atmosphere overall, despite looking dated. The music is excellent, as it was in the previous Fallout game, and it really helps to add to that 50s futuristic aesthetic. The sound design is also improved. Weapons sound much better this time around. A large number of companions is on offer with a number of differing skill sets. They each have their own views about the world, morals, backstories, and you can even romance some of them. There's a huge cast of characters here, and I really appreciate the addition. I use certain ones at certain times for certain things in gameplay, but also their stories are very compelling. The game can be surprisingly difficult, even on normal, and sometimes it's not fair. When enemies throw grenades at you, it's very hard to determine where those grenades are and to get out of the way in time, and there will be the occasional bullshit death, but overall it's refreshing to play a AAA game on normal difficulty and struggle to complete certain objectives. There are also legendary enemies and loot in the game, which is very fun. You can just be walking along and then suddenly stumble into a legendary enemy, have a big battle with him, and then pick up some kick-ass loot at the end of it. I really appreciate that. There's multiple ways to discover quests in the game. You can overhear them in conversation, obviously talk to an NPC and find out what they need. You can stumble across them just as you're wandering through the wasteland, or you can even hear them on the radio. I really appreciate that there are lots of ways to find out about quests in this game. It helps to add a sense of life to the world. The conversation UI allows for multiple people to take part in a conversation simultaneously, and I really like that, and it's a huge improvement over the previous game. The leveling by doing system, for example sneaking for 100 hours to level up your sneaking from Skyrim, has been removed, and it's been replaced with a talent tree system. It feels a lot more mechanical than previous games and maybe slightly more unrealistic, but I honestly prefer it as it allows me to specialize in the things I want and immediately reap the rewards of that investment. VATS doesn't pause the game like it used to, and that keeps risk alive during fights. If enemies are too close to you when you go into VATS, they will do damage to you. If enemies are shooting at you, you will still be shot by that bullet. I really appreciate that. It adds a sense of risk, and it minimizes the usefulness of VATS. A tiny addition, bobbleheads are still in the game. It's great. They give you permanent stat boosts this time around. They can give you some pretty unique features. I really like that. There are also 20 of them scattered throughout the game for you to find, and it's very, very compelling because you want them because they have huge stat boosts that are very useful. Comic books give you holotape games, which are fun to play, and the additional cosmetic tattoo or item here and there. Now, it took me about 8 hours to really start getting into this game, and if I'm honest, that's because I was faced with so many problems initially off the bat. It kind of had a negative impact on my overall experience, but also the story for the first couple of hours really wasn't very compelling, and it was only once I got into the later half of the game that I really started to enjoy everything this game had to offer. The mechanics are very good, and when it comes to Bethesda games, it really is the best game Bethesda has made. Now, the question a lot of people are going to be asking is this the game of the year? And I think, honestly, given all of the problems I've listed, I don't think it warrants that title. Is it a good game? Certainly. Is it the best game Bethesda has ever made? I think so. But with all of these problems, I really don't think it's worthy of that title. If they had spent an extra 6 months to a year polishing this game up, it would have easily taken that spot. But with all the problems included, I simply don't think it's good enough to warrant that. That being said, it's a fantastic game, and if you have the opportunity to pick it up, I would thoroughly recommend that you do so. If you like my review, please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.